corporate governance and corporate social responsibility, CG and CSR. For a long time, these were, just dry box-ticking exercises.
Absolutely, just corporate jargon.
But in post-millennium India, they become huge buzzwords. They can determine if a company is seen as a serious long-term player or, well, just a quick profit machine.
And that's what we're diving into today. We've looked at sources detailing the practices of three absolute heavyweights: ITC, Reliance Industries, and Infosys.
The mission for you today is to understand how these giants really operate, beyond just the balance sheets.
Right, and the reason this comparison is so useful is that these three companies, they represent three really distinct archetypes of ownership and control across the entire Indian private sector.
Okay, let's unpack those three models for everyone listening. First up is ITC. They're often called the professionally managed giant.
Meaning no single identified promoter. It's the institutional shareholders and professional managers who are really driving the ship.
Then you swing to the complete opposite end of the spectrum with Reliance Industries, RIL.
The massive conglomerate, decidedly family-led, still under very strong promoter control.
And finally, Infosys, the IT pioneer, the one company that, really set the global benchmark for meritocracy and, crucially, for governance in India.
Yeah, especially on the world stage. So you have three corporate titans, and each one is guided by a really unique philosophy.
Understanding those philosophies seems key because it gets at how they see their role. Is it just about profit, or is it something bigger?
Exactly. And let's start with Infosys, because they put governance front and center. They almost treated it like a business asset.
They really did. Their whole belief, right from the start, was that the best governance attracts the best investors.
That's the one. And that belief pushed them to do things nobody else was doing. They were the first Indian company on the NASDAQ. They got full Sarbanes-Oxley compliance SOX, which is that really tough American standard.
So they weren't just aiming for the minimum legal requirement in India. Their whole philosophy was about satisfying the spirit of the law, not just the letter.
That's the phrase. And that proactive approach led to their legendary commitment to transparency. Their internal mantra was powerful but so simple.
When in doubt, disclose.
When in doubt, disclose. And that wasn't just for show. It created this high-trust environment that, as people like Mark Mobius have noted, really lifted the confidence of the entire Indian industry when it came to attracting foreign money.
Okay, so if Infosys is driven by transparency to attract global capital, how does ITC approach it with their professionally managed setup?
ITC frames its approach around this idea of trusteeship, transparency, and ethical corporate citizenship. Their definition of CG is to enhance wealth-generating capacity.
Which sounds like a pretty standard capitalist goal.
It does, but they immediately add a huge qualifier, don't they? They say that growth must, at the same time, meet stakeholder aspirations and societal expectations.
And they formalize this. They call it the development of the triple bottom line.
The triple bottom line. Economic, ecological, and social capital.
That sounds great, but how do you actually reconcile that? Doesn't protecting ecological capital sometimes clash with, quarterly returns?
That's the tension they choose to manage. Their philosophy is that protecting those other capitals, the social and ecological ones, is actually a long-term investment. It ensures the whole business is sustainable, which in turn protects the economic capital.
Okay, so last up on philosophy, we have Reliance. How does the family-led behemoth define its approach?
With Reliance, the view is that good governance comes from the organization's culture, from its mindset. They talk about an unequivocal commitment to all stakeholders, employees, customers, shareholders, everyone.
So all three talk about stakeholders. RIL's story seems to put more weight on internal efficiency and just delivering, rather than the kind of external structural transparency that Infosys championed.
That's a great way to put it.
Look, it's one thing to have a philosophy, but the real test is how it shows up in the engine room, the corporate board. So let's get into the structures.
Indeed. The data from around 2005 is really telling. Back then, there was this key rule in Indian listing agreements called Clause 49, which set the minimum for independent directors.
And how did our three companies stack up against that minimum?
Well, interestingly, both ITC and Reliance had a similar ratio of executive directors, around 33%. As of March 2005, ITC met the standard exactly. 50% of its board were non-executive independent directors.
So they hit the letter of the law.
They did.
In Infosys, who promised to go beyond the letter.
They absolutely did. Out of their 16 directors, 9 were independent, That's well over 50%. It was a clear signal to investors that institutional oversight was core to who they were.
There's also that difference in who holds the top job, the chairman and CEO roles.
Yes, that's a classic governance indicator. In both ITC and Reliance, those positions are held by the same person. It can simplify decision-making.
But Infosys separated them.
Clearly demarcated them. A classic checks and balances move. They were so strict about it that they had a rule that executive directors had to retire at 60, which meant their own co-founder, Narayana Murthy, had to step down as executive chairman in 2006.
Why? They apply the rules even to their own founders. That says a lot.
It does. But the real control often lies in the board committees. And how they compare there is fascinating.
So how do they differ?
This is where Infosys just runs away with it. All companies have the required committees, audit, compensation, things like that. Infosys had 6. And here's the crucial part. All of their committees, except for 2 that handled routine stuff like share transfers, were made up entirely of independent directors.
Wait, you're saying their audit committee, the one overseeing all the financials, the internal controls, transactions with related parties, was 100% independent?
Correct. That one detail is probably the strongest assurance of oversight you can give. It means the big decisions about the company's books were being vetted only by directors with no executive stake in the game. It goes right back to their core idea.
If you want global money, you need global standards.
Exactly, regardless of what the local law required.
Okay, let's shift from structure to impact. Let's talk about the social and environmental side of CSR. What are some of the standout examples? Let's start with ITC's environmental work, which seems pretty unique.
It is genuinely pioneering. ITC prides itself on being water positive. They replenish more water than they consume, and they're aiming to be carbon positive too. They invest a huge amount in large-scale resource management.
And the eChupal initiative is a massive example of their social capital at work.
Absolutely massive. The eChapel network gives farmers knowledge, weather data, and real-time price info through internet kiosks across 7 states. It's a perfect example of using corporate infrastructure to create social and economic value. It ties right back to that triple bottom line.
And Reliance. Their focus seems more on industrial quality and national health programs.
RIL is all about operational excellence. I mean, the Jamnagar refinery winning 42 golden certificates for reliability is a testament to their focus on industrial quality. Socially, they're big on national health initiatives like the pulse polio and tuberculosis control programs.
And Infosys, of course. Their commitment to human capital was there from day one.
Precisely. They were one of the first Indian companies to actually put human capital on their balance sheet. And the community work reflects that. It's intensely focused on education. They have the Infosys Fellowship for Higher Studies and the Catch Them Young program to get kids interested in tech early on.
This brings us to a deep dive on Reliance, because you can't really separate the company's story from its leader, Mukesh Ambani. RIL is just this colossal force, and its history is all about massive risk and unparalleled scale.
That is the key word, scale. Mukesh Ambani, as chairman and MD, just embodies it. He famously left his Stanford MBA in 1980 to join his father. He directed these mega projects like Jamnagar, which is still the world's largest grassroots refinery. His net worth is just staggering around 108 billion US dollars as of May 2025.
And his vision isn't just about small steps. It's about finding India's most critical needs and then fulfilling them at scale and over a long arc of time. You see it with refining, and you definitely see it with the $25 billion launch of Geo in 2016.
I mean, that just changed everything in the digital landscape.
It did. But that kind of high-velocity, high-stakes approach has also drawn a lot of scrutiny. Ambani has attracted fame, but also a lot of criticism. There are reports that classify him as a plutocrat and mention allegations of cronyism and political corruption.
And we have to report on that context impartially. There was one major case involving alleged stock manipulation with Reliance Petroleum Limited, or RPL.
What happened there?
So this goes back to 2007. SEBI, the market regulator, alleged that RIL used manipulative trades in RPL's futures market to artificially push the price down right before a planned sale of shares. The investigation took years, and in 2021, SEBI fined RIL 950 crores.
Which is about 4.47 billion rupees in alleged gains and another 5 billion in interest.
Exactly. It just shows the complexity of policing these massive corporate actions.
And then there's the story of the band biography, which really illustrates the corporate defense playbook. Hamish MacDonald's 1998 book, The Polyester Prince.
An incredible story. The book chronicled RAL's rise and talked about what the author called the ethical costs of building the empire, but the book was never published in India.
RAL got temporary injunctions.
On the grounds of anticipatory defamation. They basically argued they would be defamed before the book even came out, and the publisher, facing the threat of RAL filing lawsuits in all 22 high courts in the country, just gave up.
It shows the immense legal and corporate muscle they were willing to use.
No question.
Given that history, and especially the bitter split between Mukesh and his brother Anil after their father died without a will, the succession plan became critically important.
It became a corporate mandate to prevent that from ever happening again. In 2022, Mukesh Ambani laid out a very public, very formal succession plan. The stated goal was to keep the firm a unit well integrated and secure.
And unlike the last generation, the roles for the next one are crystal clear.
Absolutely. The twins, Akash and Isha, are leading the consumer businesses. Akash is heading telecom with Jio. Isha is running retail. And the youngest, Anant, is focused on the new growth engine, green energy. He's spending most of his time in Jamnagar.
That green energy mandate is a huge pivot for RAL's future, isn't it?
It's a massive, decisive move. Solar, batteries, hydrogen. It reflects on Ambani's belief that he needs to solve India's clean energy needs at scale, and you can see it in their financials. In Q4 of FY25, their consolidated profit was up 6%.
And those big consumer bets are really paying off.
Oh yeah. Jio's profit after tax jumped almost 26%, with nearly 500 million subscribers. Retail profit was up 29%. Now, the legacy oil to chemicals margins shrank a bit, but that's expected as they shift focus to building out that new energy business.
To really put RAL's journey in context, you have to look at the other giant building modern India, Gautam Adani. Based on 2025 figures, how do these two stack up?
They're essentially the two pillars of India's economy now, but they do different things. Ambani is still India's richest person, around 102 billion. Adani is right behind at 90 to 92 billion after a big recovery.
And their business models are almost mirror images in a way.
Precisely. Ambani's Reliance is building the digital, consumer-driven economy. Telecom, retail, digital finance. It's all about connecting people. The Adani Group is building the physical infrastructure and energy backbone, ports, power, airports, renewables.
So one is connecting the people, the other is literally powering the country's machinery. How does the market see them?
Reliance is generally seen as the safer, more diversified bet. Consistent profits, huge consumer base, stable debt. Adani represents higher growth, long-term infrastructure potential, but maybe with a bit more risk. They're both indispensable. Ambani is building the operating system for India's consumers. Adani is building the hardware.
So today, we've looked at these really distinct approaches. We have Infosys, the transparent global model focused on the spirit of the law.
We have ITC, driven by that triple bottom line and professional management.
And Reliance, the family-led behemoth that prioritizes execution at a scale that is just, well, unprecedented.
And we've seen how Reliance's huge strategic bets are now framed by this very clear succession plan designed to secure the institution's future.
So what's the final thought for you to chew on? We've seen a company like Infosys champion maximum transparency and compliance, while Reliance champions incredible speed and execution, even if that sometimes attracts regulatory heat. So here's the question. In a rapidly developing economy, to build a trillion-dollar dream, does success require a degree of bold, high-stakes maneuvering that maybe challenges the strict letter of governance? Or is that Infosys-style transparency the only sustainable path to long-term value?
That tension between speed and strictness, between the connector and the builder, is something you really have to consider as they continue to shape India's future.